everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. We're big, we're bad, and we're back with Mr. Jerry Hammack talking about the Beatles' second album, With the Beatles. Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Warren. How are you doing? It's good to see you again.
It's good. This is good. I couldn't help but notice that this was recorded, according to notes here, between the 18th of July and the 23rd of October. One would presume it's because they were starting to get really, really successful. So I assume they were going in and out of the studio between doing shows and promotional stuff and all that kind of fun things.
Yeah, absolutely. They're on the upswing of Beatlemania in the UK and growing into the global phenomenon that they became. So their schedule was all of a sudden crazy. Think about the fact that not only do they have the recording commitments for singles and for albums, a couple albums a year, a couple singles a year under their contract, but they also have now television commitments. They've got radio interviews. They're doing live BBC performances. They're touring. They are as busy as pop stars get, and so they're squeezing in another album here in the ensuing chaos. And what an album.
So once again on this album, they've got 6 covers and 8 originals. Both albums have 14 songs. I would imagine, though, they probably would have been pushing for more of their own material, but considering how unbelievably busy they were, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's many a tale told of the Beatles working in hotel rooms, writing songs on tour, just trying to keep up with the demands. And if you think of that they were composing and recording these things on a very tight schedule, and then the quality of work that's coming out the back end, the standard that the Beatles set for not only productivity but quality is just absolutely hard to match. By modern standards, you think of a modern pop career where you might get an album out every couple of years, every 5 years with some major stars. And here the Beatles we're still in 1963. We're still in the year that they've done Please Please Me. They've already done 2 singles as well. And now before the end of the year, they've got 2 more singles and an entire other album released. It's amazing.
Well, there's some fun topics of conversation on this. Before we get stuck in, of course, there is the Beatles version of I Want to Be Your Man, which they had given to the Stones earlier and been a hit for the Stones. I always love this idea, and we'll touch on it, that they give a song to the Stones, which becomes a massive hit. And then when they cover it, their own song, Ringo sings it. I always love that.
So before we start talking about the songs, let's talk about the studio setup as they were recording the With the Beatles album. So the Beatles were still recording to twin track during the With the Beatles era. And you might wonder, how do I do overdubs, or what they called superimpositions, during that era? And it's actually a pretty straightforward process. You would record the backing track or the first bit of work that they're doing either to 1 track or 2 tracks of the BTR-3 twin track machine. Let's say they only did it to 1 track. In that instance, I would then record the second track as pretty much a straight overdub, like you would even in the modern era. If, however, I had filled up both tracks of the twin track with material, then I would send the signal of the twin track to another twin track machine, another BTR-3. And as that signal is being recorded to it, I'm simultaneously recording my overdubs to that. I could record them to either 1 or both tracks of the twin track. So pretty straightforward process, but that's the way it was done. They were doing overdubs even with the twin track. So there hasn't been a whole lot of change in the gear that the Beatles are using to make their music here in the With the Beatles era. Lennon's still using the Rickenbacker 325 Capri. Harrison, however, has moved on to a Gretsch Country Gentleman, the 6122. Starr has moved on to a 1963 Ludwig Oyster Black downbeat set, and McCartney is still using his 61 Hofner 500/1 bass. No change in the amplification either. There's still the 30-watt 1962 JMI Vox AC30/6 twins are being used by both Lennon and Harrison. McCartney, however, has upped his game. He's got a real bass amplifier now. He's using a Vox T60 head and cabinet for his work. So very basic tool set that they're using. Can't neglect to mention the Gibson J160E acoustic electric guitars that were also in play.
So first off is a personal favorite. It Won't Be Long. And I love this song. Hey, it's a great song, but I love those call and response harmonies. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's something that I love about the earlier albums. And look, they harmonize the whole time, all the way right through to the end as harmonies. But in these early albums, everything had to be worked out live because, they were a live band. And you really do get a feeling of what can we do with three of us singing? And so they really come up with really super clever ideas. And this is one of my favorites for that.
This song really shows the strength now of having George Martin completely involved in the tracks. Super crisp arrangements, making the most of the vocals that they bring to it. It's a super powerful start to an album, as powerful as they started off the Please Please Me with I Saw Her Standing There. Just a great kickoff track. It Won't Be Long was recorded on July 30th, 1963 at Studio 2. The backing track had Lennon on guitar and lead vocals, McCartney on bass and backing vocals, Harrison on guitar and backing vocals, and Starr on drums. It took him 7 takes to get the backing track right, which isn't bad. Martin had them continue on after that, but they didn't need to. They had it in the can after 7. The next work that was done on the track was some overdubs, and that included Harrison's lead guitar work and Lennon double tracking his lead vocal. That took them up to take 17. The next thing that they did was an edit piece, and they were trying to get the whole band to give them Martin was trying to get the whole band to give them a stronger ending on it, and he did, and that ended up being edit piece 21. So now we've got the core of the performance with the overdubs of take 17. We have this edit piece of the end of the song, which is nice and strong, take 21. Those are edited together, and that became the basis of the mono and stereo mixes.
Next up is All I've Got to Do.
For people that weren't around in the era, I was around a little late in the era, but I still remember the influence of the bossa nova in the 60s that was going on. And here we've got a little taste of that kind of shuffle going on in the groove, and it showed the Beatles mastering these different sorts of rhythmic approaches to songs too. This is a great showcase for Lennon's vocals. It's a pretty sophisticated vocal, and
Paul's like playing chordal kind of stuff on the bass, isn't he?
Yeah, it's just the approach that the Beatles took to their instrumentation and their arrangement of their tracks. They were always looking for something a little bit different than anyone else was doing at the time. So McCartney, for people that aren't aware, really started life as a guitar player, not a bass player. And so there he's using some of those chops, those rhythmic chops as well on the bass to give you a different texture, which frankly the Beatles are doing throughout their career. They're always looking for those different textures in the sounds and in the arrangements of the tracks. So this one was recorded on September 11th, 1963. The backing track had Lennon on electric guitar and lead vocals, McCartney on bass and backing vocals, Harrison on guitar, and Starr on drums. They fumbled through this one. 8 of the takes were false starts, but by take 14, they had a solid backing track and were able to move on to very simple superimposition that included McCartney and Harrison on backing vocals at the choruses. And that's all that was required on the song. They were done with it after that. So a remix from that, which was take 15, and we're ready to get another song going for the album.
So next up is a song that was never actually officially a single in the UK or the US, All My Loving, but of course is one of their most famous songs, which is absolutely crazy that it was never officially a single. Although I did read that it became a #1 hit in Canada, and through imports from Canada, ended up charting at number 45 in the US. I mean, that was the power of where they were at this period of their careers, that, you know, a imported song from another country could have you chart in your country.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I have a real personal connection to All My Loving. When I first started playing bass, that was a song that I thought, if I can play All My Loving, then I can play bass. Or I gave me an idea that I might be able to play bass. So, boy, I worked on that track. Great walking bass line, and just compelling. That song drives the whole way from start to finish, and McCartney's got terrific vocal on it. Once again, the crispness of these performances, the level of these performances, given all the pressures and time constraints on the band, it's just remarkable to me. It remains remarkable to me. This terrific tune was recorded on July 30th, 1963 in Studio 2. Pretty much a live track. McCartney on bass, doing that wonderful walking bass and lead vocals. Lennon on electric guitar and backing vocals. Harrison on guitar and backing vocals, and Starr on drums. Just so wonderful. Only took them 11 takes to get it right. And then these only overdub was McCartney double tracking his lead vocal. That's it. And that only took him 3 additional takes to get it. So by take 14, including the overdubs, we're done with the track, and an absolute Beatles classic. One session in and done. Amazing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Don't Bother Me, which comes next, is the first Harrison-released track, written and sung by George Harrison.
It is. He gets a songwriting credit as well as a performance, vocal on the album. It's interesting that Harrison's take on this, and throughout his songwriting, Harrison's got a little bit darker view of things than Lennon and McCartney, and a little more, maybe a little more honest view of what's going on in his life, a little more personally reflective. And it starts with "Don't Bother Me." I can hear that song speaking directly to the pressures of being a Beatle and being, what was he at this time? 19 years old, 20 years old, and all this pressure. I can really see it. Neat little song, dark little song, but a neat recording. The backing track for "Don't Bother Me" took a couple of days to get right. They worked on it on September 11th. In fact, the majority of the work on the backing track was September 11th, but they did a remake on September 12th, where they ended up doing 4 versions on that day and finally got a backing track right. That included Harrison on guitar and lead vocals, Lennon on guitar, McCartney on bass, and Starr on drums. So just 4 takes now on the 12th, the second session for the song, to get it in the can. That would be take 13. That ended up being the final backing track. And then there was actually a pretty extensive overdub done to the song. That was Harrison double tracking his lead vocals, Lennon on tambourine, McCartney on woodblock, and Starr on something called a doumbek, which is an Egyptian handheld percussion instrument. That was it. One group overdub, and we get the song in the can. Mixed on September 30th and October 29th in Studio 2 and Studio 3 respectively, to have the mono and stereo versions of the song. Neat tune, dark tune, but a neat tune.
Of course, next up is Little Child, which I read was originally written for Ringo, but of course he ended up singing I Want to Be Your Man. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is one of those songs where it's a good thing that I've got my notes, because Little Child is fairly complicated for being a pretty straightforward rock and roll song, right? It was recorded across 2 days as well, September 11th and September 12th, 1963 in Studio 2. By the second day, they were up to take 12 of the backing track, which featured Lennon on guitar and McCartney on bass, Harrison on guitar, and Starr on drums. So a pure instrumental backing track for this one. When they finally got it in the can there at take 12, then they overdubbed the vocals, Lennon and McCartney's lead vocals, to the track. Another superimposition then followed, and that was takes 14 and 15 with Lennon playing harmonica on the track and McCartney playing the Steinway Music Room grand piano on the track. And that was it for the day, except for one little piece of work, which was an edit piece. And with that, Lennon perfected his harmonica solo. Now we go away for a while and we come back, and it's September 30th and start working on the track again. And in this case, they decided that between take 15, which was the best of the backing track with overdubs, and take 18, that edit piece, that they had a solid song. So the first work of the day was to create an edit of takes 15 and 18. And for those of you listening to like the 2009 version of this track in stereo, the edit's going to be pretty obvious to your ears. I'm not going to tell you where it is because I don't want to be the guy that made you forever hear the edit in Little Child. But if you care to go there and ruin the song for yourself, now you know that lurking within the first minute of the track is an edit that you will never, ever not hear. So sorry about that. Not my fault. On October 3rd, they did the final work on the track, which was just a simple overdub of Lennon double tracking his vocal, which is the "come on, come on, come on" vocal. And that was it. Remixed over a couple of days, October 23rd and October 29th. And they had the mono and stereo versions ready for us to consume and enjoy.
So next up is the first cover on the record, which of course is "Till There Was You," which is a truly, truly beautiful song.
Yeah, it is. I believe this is from the Music Man musical, and again betraying McCartney's love of Broadway, of that musical form. And this was a song that as well that went back to their Hamburg days. They were performing this at the Star Club, and just a great track. They knew it inside out, made very short work of it in the studio. This beautiful song was recorded July 18th, 1963 in Studio 2. Backing track had McCartney on bass and lead vocals, Lennon on acoustic guitar, Harrison on the nylon string, Jose Ramirez Gutierrez de Estudio. So I hope I don't offend anybody with my pronunciations there. And Starr on Premier bongos. Just such a great track. I just love it. It didn't take them long to get everything right. Only eight takes of the song, and they didn't require any overdubs. Live backing track, live vocals, and we have just an absolute classic version of a classic song.
Next up is just a wonderful, wonderful cover of an amazing song. "Please, Mr. Postman."
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the definitive versions of this track. Another one of the girl group favorites of the Beatles, but they just absolutely take the energy through the roof. And this is, via Lennon. Lennon, for some reason, could really nail these songs in a very authentic way, and in a way that made them their own. This is, I think, a great example of what the Beatles were doing to reintroduce America to kind of its heritage of music. And they were such great fans of it. And here through this track in particular, they just bring it home. Fantastic rock and roll song, just one for the ages.
Definitely. And for those of you that know what apparently has become my catchphrase, this band that originally recorded this, of course, was the Marvelettes. So I think that's rather special.
So here's another track that was very straightforward, although they had kind of a false start with it. Please, Mr. Postman, the backing track had Lennon on guitar and lead vocals, Harrison on guitar and backing vocals, McCartney on bass and backing vocals, and Starr on drums. They did 3 takes of it, and Martin had what he thought was a take in a can. and started to do overdubs on it, and then decided, I'll bet we could do better on it. And I'm so glad they did. They picked up with take 4 of the backing track at that point to basically do a remake right on top of the one that they had just worked on. And now they take it up to take 7, and we've got this great backing track that we all love. A very straightforward overdub as well. The only thing going on with that is Lennon double tracking his lead vocals, Harrison and McCartney double tracking their backing vocals, and some hand claps. It only took them 2 takes to get that right. Started with take 7, and by take 9, songs in the can and ready to be mixed. Mixes occurred on August 21st and then into the fall, October 29th. Great classic rock and roll from the Beatles on this one.
So next up is the first track on side 2. This is by, I think, personally, originally written and performed by one of the most important of the early rock and rollers, Chuck Berry. I mean, he had it all. Chuck Berry was an incredible guitar player, incredible performer, incredible songwriter, just unbelievable. For me, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent learning Chuck Berry riffs, and I really love George Harrison's version. It's a little sweeter, not quite as aggressive as Chuck's version. Doesn't quite have the blues and the girth, but it's a really cool version, and it just shows what great taste they had that they were covering Chuck Berry.
Yeah, here's another track, Roll Over Beethoven, that comes from their days back in Hamburg. They've been playing it forever. Lennon was a huge Chuck Berry fan, and it almost surprises me that they gave this one, to Harrison to sing. But it's a great showcase for Harrison. Certainly a little bit smoother version than Berry, but his guitar work is great on it. It's a solid rock and roll performance, and I think a great version of the track. So this is another one of the summer recordings, July 30th, 1963 in Studio 2. Very straightforward, with Harrison on electric guitar and lead vocals, Lennon on guitar, McCartney on bass, Starr on drums. Didn't take him much to get into it, only 5 takes of the song, and they had the backing track in the can, which is pretty quick work when you think about those tricky Chuck Berry licks. But he didn't have to get the solo right, so that's part of it, because that's what came next was an overdub, and that was Harrison double tracking his lead vocal, adding that guitar solo that we love, and then hand claps from Lennon and McCartney. There was one other bit of work done on it, which was an edit piece where Martin had the entire band replace basically the last chord of the song. And so then they cut together takes 7, the core of the song, and takes 8. And that became the basis of the remixes. It was mixed on August 21st and October 29th. And great little rock and roll, a great version of a Chuck Berry track. Good job, George.
All right, next up, we have Hold Me Tight with Paul McCartney singing lead vocals.
Hold Me Tight was actually a track that the band had started to record for the Please Please Me album and couldn't get a version of they like. So here now, later in 1963, we're trying it again, and it's essentially it's a full remake. September 12th now, we're into the fall, and we're in Studio 2 again. The backing track, we've got McCartney on bass and lead vocals, Lennon on guitar and backing vocals, Harrison also on guitar with backing vocals, and Starr on drums. Because it's a remake, they didn't start with take 1, they started with take 20. And it only took them a few takes to it. If you ever get a chance to hear, there's bootlegs of this, you ever get a chance to hear these, it's kind of hilarious. When they get to the take that is the backing track, take 24, you hear Norman Smith just shout at them as he's slating the take. He's like, "Take 24!" He just shouts it out. But maybe he was motivating them. I don't know. But take 24, great backing track all of a sudden. We had 5 superimposition takes that followed, and those included McCartney's harmony lead vocals and Harrison and Lennon on backing vocals and hand claps. Between now take 26, one of the versions of the backing track with overdubs, and take 29, Martin felt like he had what he needed for the track, and so at first he tried a remix that was an edit of takes 26 and 29, but ultimately he didn't go with that. Ultimately, he went with a mono version from take 26 and a stereo version from take 29. So here's a song that, and I think this might be one of those rarities, like the only time in Beatle history, that they've got a different full release version of a track from a different take in their mono version of the recordings, the mono release version, and the stereo release version. Beatle Police can check me on that if I've made a mistake. I await your judgment.
So next up is a pretty adventurous song to try, because this is, of course, a Smokey Robinson song. You've really got a hold on me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Warren. Adventurous is kind of an understatement. This song, if you've ever tried to play and sing this song, you'll know it's complicated. It's complicated in terms of its timing, the swing of it, the flow of the vocals in relation to the backing track. It's not an easy song to pull off. And it's got a 3-part harmony going on in it. You know, hats off to the Beatles for even attempting it. And then they do a fairly definitive version of it at that. I just love this track. One of my favorites, absolutely.
And I think, just as a sideline, I must say, Smokey Robinson is unbelievable. He wrote the song, he sings this song, he also produced it.
Yeah. There's a handful of crazy talented people in the history of music. Smokey Robinson is one of those people for sure.
So this song is another one where I'm glad I've got my crib notes for it. I've got my crib notes for everything, actually. But this one in particular, because it's a bit of a complicated recording, and it makes sense. The Beatles wanted to honor Smokey Robinson in the version that they did of this song, and they did do it right. The backing track here, recorded on July 18th, 1963 in Studio 2, was Lennon on acoustic guitar, McCartney on bass, Harrison on electric guitar, his country gentleman, and Starr on drums. Only took them 5 takes to get the backing track right, and then they moved into the overdubs. Initially, the overdubs were Lennon on the lead vocals and McCartney and Harrison on backing vocals, with Harrison adding a few touches of lead guitar as well. Then there was another set of overdubs that happened, and that was George Martin on the Studio Steinway Music Room grand piano. After that, they did 3 edit pieces, and those were, if you're familiar with the song, toward the or during the last full verse of the song, you hear McCartney go, "Baby," and believe it or not, there was an edit piece just for him to insert that one word into the track at the 2-minute and 22-second mark of the song. Then lastly, there was another edit piece that was created for the introduction of the song, where Martin duplicated Harrison's intro line on grand piano. So a lot of work to get this thing right and to dial it in. You can see in this, I believe you can see in this, the care that they would later take in picking just the right highlights to bring to life for the songs that they were recording. And this is George Martin at work, right? It needs a little piano at the introduction. I want to hear McCartney take it up a notch there at 2:22. So we'll do an edit piece where he just sings one word. All of that makes sense. And going forward, you can see how these kind of sensibilities were baked into a lot of the work that the Beatles did. This made it a little complicated for when it came time to mix it, however, because they had to first create an edit of take 7, takes 10, and take 11. And but they did that. That's what engineers are for, to cut tape together, and they got a great mix out of it. So I love this track.
So here we are with Ringo's vocal prowess on, of course, I Want to Be Your Man, which very famously a few months before had been covered by the Rolling Stones. So I love this idea that the Beatles were now covering their own song that they'd given to the Stones. But instead of, John or Paul singing it, Ringo's singing it.
Yeah, is that a comment on Mick Jagger? I'm not sure. Ringo always joked that he had like a 5-note vocal range he had a better vocal range than that. This song played up to his strengths playing it live. There could be a lot of energy behind it. Wasn't the most articulate vocal, part required. It's a great rocker, and it was a great showpiece for them when they played live, and for Ringo playing live. So, give him a turn, and he just really wails this song, and another great rock and roll tune. It's very straightforward.
"I Want to Be Your Man" is actually a bigger song than we might remember it as. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to listen to it. Or listen to it again and rediscover it, because it's a pretty big song for such a simple thing. And, it's giving Ringo a vocal turn. We got to give him and his fans their due. And I think they really took it seriously. They gave him something really strong with the addition of Lennon and McCartney's vocals. So we're in the fall again, September 11th, 1963, when we record this in Studio 2. Backing track, we've got all instrumental, just Starr on drums, Lennon on guitar, Harrison on his Country Gentleman, and McCartney on bass. Only took one take to get the backing track down. There you go. That reminds me of some old days, of the Please Please Me days, when we're getting songs done in one take. And that was it for this session. Now, the following day, they tried it again and decided, you know what? I think this is the one. And they finally ended up with take 7. So they thought they had it in one take, but it actually took 7. Martin did a little bit of work right after this, playing with adding an organ to it, and it didn't hold. So that work never moved forward. Instead, coming back to the session on October 3rd, they double-tracked Starr's lead vocals, Lennon and McCartney's backing vocals. They added maracas, and then Martin also finalized his organ work for the track on that day. And then in another session, so if you're keeping track here, now this is the 4th session for this seemingly pretty simple song. On October 23rd, we add some tambourine by Starr. Now, mercifully, that's it. No more work needs to be done on this very straightforward track. I kind of wonder if the Stones put as much work into their version of it, and I'm guessing they didn't.
So this next song was originally called A Devil in His Heart because it was recorded by a girl group, which I believe is called the Donays or the Donays. Don't want to pronounce it wrong. And of course, they changed it with George singing it to A Devil in Her Heart.
And this was another showcase of the Beatles as vocalists, where great harmonies, picking up on the whole girl group vibe. It was really appropriate for them to pick up on influences from these girl groups, because it did allow them as vocalists to do a lot of 3-part work together. They loved that music, they emulated it, and with their own voices, they created great versions of girl group standards through this early part of their career. Devil in Her Heart is one of those really great renditions of a classic American song.
The Beatles made really short work of Devil in Her Heart. This was recorded July 18th in Studio 2. And the backing track had Harrison on his Country Gentleman and lead vocals, Lennon on the 325 Capri and backing vocals, and McCartney on bass and backing vocals, Starr on drums. Only 3 takes were required to get the backing track down. So just like that, they've nailed this classic song. What followed was an overdub where Starr added some maracas, and Harrison cleaned up parts of his lead vocal track, but then double-tracked in the same pass, double-tracked other parts of it, and that was it. So very, very straightforward. 3 tracks. It only took him 3 takes to get the maracas and the backing vocal or in the lead vocal fixes and double tracking done. So we're up to take 6, and that's the basis of the mixes for the song. Short work for, I think, is a really great Harrison tune, and I think a really great version of a classic track.
So next up is second to last. second to last, but no means second to last least. That makes absolutely no sense, but I'm going to keep it. Not a second time. I was trying to make some joke about not a second time. A Lennon song.
Yeah, this is probably one of the more obscure Beatles songs, even for the era. There's a piano solo on it, of all things. So go figure that one out. Not probably a top 10 with a lot of Beatles fans. It's got a quirky melody, but again, we have to keep in context the fact that the Beatles are writing a lot of this stuff on the go. They've got a crazy, hectic schedule. So I'll give them this one for this album at this time in their career.
Not a Second Time was another one of those songs that was recorded in the fall. This is September 11th, 1963 in Studio 2. Really straightforward. Backing track had Lennon on acoustic guitar and lead vocals, McCartney on bass and backing vocals, Harrison on acoustic guitar and Starr on drums. Only took them 5 takes of this to get the backing track in the can. And then they immediately moved on to overdubs, where Lennon double-tracked his lead vocal and George Martin added some Steinway piano to the track. That was it. Very, very straightforward, right to the point. 5 tracks, only 4 takes to get the overdubs done. Very neat work. And we've got another really cool Beatles song in the can.
Well, last but definitely, 100% definitely not, no means least, is Money. I think this is an absolutely fantastic cover. There's something about the Beatles in this sort of first few albums period that we all love, the Hard Day's Night stuff, and we were talking earlier off camera about the movie. This sort of playfulness, and this version of Money's got that. It just seems like 4 guys just having a blast doing a really incredible A-list song, and just that's what it's just got I don't know what you want to say, some pizzazz to it. It's fun. It's one of my favorite early Beatles songs, even though it's a cover. I put it right in there with some of my favorites.
So here, Money at the end of the album, the With the Beatles album, was fulfilling kind of George Martin's mission for these Beatle albums, was start strong and end unforgettable. And so we started strong. Yeah, we started strong with in the Please Me era with I Saw Her Standing There, ended unforgettable, A Twist and Shout, and here we're ending pretty unforgettably with Money. I think it stands up as a song to cap an album just as well as Twist and Shout stands up in the Please Me album. It's just a terrific rendition, super high energy, and it leaves you wanting more. And leaves me excited to buy the next Beatle album and to hear the next Beatle album.
Or flip it back over to side 1 and play it all over again.
There you go.
So Money was recorded on July 18th, 1963 in Studio 2. The backing track, very straightforward. Lennon on his Rickenbacker 325 Capri with lead vocals. McCartney on bass, that great Hofner that we all love. Harrison on his Country Gentleman, Gretsch guitar, and Starr on drums. The backing track, though recorded 5 times, only produced 2 complete tracks. Take 1 and Take 5 were the only versions that they got all the way through, and Take 5 was considered the best of those. Right after that, Martin goes down to the Studio 4 and jumps on the Steinway piano, and along with Starr tapping out some drumstick percussion, he does that piano intro bit for the song as an edit piece to the song. After that, he does an overdub where he does some more piano, and then there's additional vocals and hand claps that are added by Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison for that overdub. That's the end of the work for the day. Now the band returns to the studio. Actually, the band doesn't return. Martin returns to the studio on July 30th, and he tries some tests on the song to see if there's another piano part that might work for it, and spends a little time with that, but none of it is making the grade for him. So the song's in the can, and now it's time to mix it. So a month later now, we're at August 21st, in a control room session. Take 6 and 7 are edited together, and they create remix mono 6/7. So that's that edit piece with the backing track and piano and overdub vocals additions that were done. And it's a great mix. But again, Martin thinks maybe there's something else to be done with this. So when it comes time for the stereo mix, he does a mix of just take 7. So what does that mean? That means when we hear the mono version of the song, we're going to hear Starr's drumsticks clicking in with the introduction piano because that was on take 6, that edit piece. Whereas take 7, Starr doesn't show up. So once again, in Beatles history, we have a mono version and a stereo version that were different. I think earlier I might have said that there was only one song that did that. I stand corrected. There are 2. So the Beatle police don't need to beat me up. And that's money. And that's what I want.
Thanks ever so much for hanging out with us, everybody, while we talked about With the Beatles. I'm excited because the next one we're going to do with Jerry, so stay tuned, is I think probably at the beginning of the golden period, like, was just incredible songs. And that would be A Hard Day's Night. Jerry, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Warren. I really appreciate talking to you about it and can't wait for the next one.
Marvelous. Thanks, everyone. Have a marvelous time. Please leave any comments and questions below. We'll see you all again very soon. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adios. See you later.